Now let's understand how do you configure your job on TrueFoundry. So let's go back to our first job deployment and let's edit the deployment to see more advanced fields. So navigate to the bottom, click on show advanced fields and you will see multiple fields crop up. First thing we'll explore is how do you parametrize your job. Firstly, why is this important? Think about if you're developing a Python script, there are instances where you want to alter the script's behavior without having to rewrite the code. And you want to make use of arguments that you mention in the final command that runs. To set up parameters, you need to do two things. Firstly, set up the parameters here. So click here, add params for input. And what I will do is I will enter two parameters. One is, let's say, a regularization parameter value, which is a string type, right? And the default value is 1. And the second one is, let's say, kernel. The default value is the radial basis function kernel. And let me skip the description here, right? Just to demonstrate that this you can do. Now, once you have done this, what you need to do is you also need to modify the command that runs. So let me just modify this and I will add this argument, this parameter name, then another argument and this parameter name. Notice that the argument name and the parameter name can be different. Now, once I click submit and deploy this job, TrueFoundry automatically generates the form based on parameters defined in the job configuration here. And let's see how that works. Note that this is lowercase, so we also need to configure this to be lowercase. So I have just fixed this and let's click submit. It's validating it and everything is fine and it will update the deployment. Now when I click here, you will see that you will get this form where you can just mention the values of the parameters, and when you click run job from UI, you're good to go. All right. One more caveat is you obviously need to change your train.py to accept these arguments. So you need to add arguments in your script. So we are skipping that part here. Let's go back to the configurations. The next thing I will cover is mounting volumes, and that becomes important when you're running multiple jobs which need to download the same set of data again. Think about running multiple training jobs across different hyperparameter searches and other settings. So this is where volumes can help. You download the data once to a volume and then you can mount that volume across multiple jobs. Now, before that, you actually have to create a volume. You need to navigate to the new deployment and click on volume here. You can select a particular workspace, click next, and here you can mention the name and you can select one option from create new volume or use existing volume. So we are skipping this for now, but if you want to go deeper into how do you create a volume, make sure to check out the documentation. Now, once you have created a volume, all you need to do is you need to add a mount path. So for example, your mount path will just be something of this sort. You can select the data type to be volume and you can mention the volume FQN. And just for context, how do you get the volume FQN? Let's go back to existing volumes on deployments, volumes, and this is volume with browser. So let me just click this one and you will see that the FQN is mentioned on the top. So this is what you need to copy and you need to mention this here in the volume FQN and you're good to go. Now this path is something you can also reference in the code. So that also works very well. Let me toggle this off for now. The next thing is retries and timeouts. So retries are important if your job is failing due to temporary conditions. Let's say it is communicating with an intermittent service and that service is down. So you might want to retry and get your job successfully executed. So you can mention the number of retries here. Timeouts, on the other hand, establish that a job should be executed within a time threshold and there is no loop that the job is stuck in and it's not consuming excessive resources. Notice that timeouts take precedence over retries. For example, if you have a timeout of 5 minutes and retries is 3, as soon as the 5-minute threshold is reached, the job stops executing, even though the retries could just be at the second retry which is ongoing. The The next thing is concurrency limit. You can set up how many jobs you want to run concurrently. By default, this is set to none, so there is no limit, there's no upper cap. Now, one thing that you would think about is how can you actually configure this? Note that if you're setting a concurrency limit to 100 and you trigger those 100 job runs parallelly, it will cost you the same as if you set the concurrency limit to 10 and you run, batches of 10 jobs 10 times to complete that 100 job runs. It will basically cost you roughly the same, unless and until the Docker image pull time is close to or greater than the job execution time, in which case it will be different. One more thing is on the service account side. Service accounts basically provide access without the need of tokens or complex authentication methods where you can access data from external services. Think about S3, for example. In this approach, you have to create a principal IAM role within the cloud platform, granting it the necessary permissions for the project's requirements. Finally, let me close this. One more thing is alerts, which you can also configure. And feel free to go through the other options here. So you can add alerts on email, Slack webhook, and Slack bots, the documentation for which is already available. Finally, you can also monitor the logs, metrics, and events from the monitoring tab. So feel free to explore this. Hope this was useful. Feel free to let us know if you have any questions directly.